Welcome back to the Tailgate University on a very chilly, almost December morning. We're glad to have with us today Mr. Ryan Brown from Jefferson County Extension. And Ryan, I thought since it was so cold and frosty this morning, it might be a good time to talk about those little details that we might need to be paying attention to. You know, we've had a bunch of days in the 60s, almost 70s, and nighttime temperatures around 40, and all of a sudden Mother Nature has decided to turn the deep freeze on us. So let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we need to be doing differently in our day-to-day management of cattle.
Sounds good.
You know, one of the things that I think that we need to really be cognizant of is water. And of course, everybody knows our water tanks freeze and our ponds freeze, that type of thing. But we need to be paying really close attention to make sure these cattle have enough intake of water to stay healthy. And water is one of the most limiting nutrients during this time of the year. So pay a little bit of extra attention, make sure that those accesses into streams and accesses into ponds, especially as it gets more muddy and as things start to freeze, that cattle can still easily access water. Another thing that we really need to think about too, Ryan, and you can kind of expound on this, is, you know, we have a lot of issues with folks that feed around bale feeders with those baby calves and that type of thing. What are some of the things that we need to be watching for to make sure we don't run into some issues with those baby calves?
Excuse me. Well, first thing is you really need to be moving your hay rings every so often. That way you don't create a big mud pit just right in the middle in one spot. Those calves like to get up beside those hay rings a lot of times, especially when spoiled hay is spilled over the side. They like to use it for bedding a lot of times, and so you can easily get some issues with calves getting trampled on, unfortunately. And just making sure we're moving those hay rings from spot to spot every so often, and that way you're not tearing up as much ground that way as well. And having, you know, some people have designated sacrifice areas where they do this. Some people feed in multiple fields, but just making sure you're cognizant of how you're doing that and how often you're moving those hay rings as well.
That's right. We see a lot of calf loss every year from that. Also, pretty good advertisement to be rolling some of these hay bales.
That's right. That's right.
You know, again, a lot of folks like to feed once a week or something like that, and I certainly understand that being a part-time person myself. But sometimes feeding every day and rolling it down the hills, especially in the very worst weather, does a couple of things for us. It spreads those cows out where we don't have that congregation, as well as some of that refusal hay makes a really good bed for some of these young calves that are just being born. So let's talk a little bit about shelter too. Shelter's a big thing. I get a lot of calls, you know, do I need to put cows in the barn? Do I need to have access into a covered area? And my go-to answer is no, you don't really need that roof, but you do need that windbreak.
Right.
What are your thoughts on keeping these cattle out of the wind? You know, what kind of temperatures do we really need to be more concerned than just getting them out of the wind?
Right. So I think a lot of that honestly depends, particularly for your spring calvers. As we get into the colder months of the wintertime here, into December, January, and February, if you have some heifers or some cows that are going to calve a little earlier, especially in those colder temperatures, making sure you not only have windbreaks like Milton said, but make sure that if you can get them to a barn really quickly, if those temperatures do start to drop down, you know, really below 20 to 15 degrees is kind of the ballpark. I tell people that's when you need to really be watching out and make sure that you have the ability to get them up pretty quick and get them under cover pretty fast.
That's exactly right. If you're calving cows in this kind of weather, make it easy on yourself and easy on the cows. Keep them close and handy to where they're easy to see and where you can provide assistance immediately if necessary. Well, that about does it for our wintertime changes to our management. So we'll see you on the next Tailgate University video. Stay tuned.